now I'm going to be moving on to foot. So I want to make sure, because we have a really tall table, I want to make sure that I give my patient a step stool, and then I also move the table all the way out so that they're not contending with the bucky underneath. All right, so I'm going to have you, I also like to just keep one hand to the side and my foot on it just in case the stool were to move. Okay, Julie, so I'm going to have you lie down on the table, face up, with your head on this end.
All right.
And before you lay down, I'm actually going to have you take off your shoe and your sock for me.
Okay.
All right. And I'm just going to move this out of the way so I'm not contending with it now. I like to put the shield on right away so I don't forget it later.
If you don't mind, I'm just
Yes, of course. Do you want me to tell you
No, I'm good.
All right, so I have my 10 by 12 cassette. I'm going to do this lengthwise to match the shape of the foot. You lift up and place down. Toes.
Toes first. Okay.
So for toes, I'm going to make sure that the
Yeah.
the MTP joints are aligned with the center of the film.
No angle on toes and angle on foot, I believe.
That's what I thought.
All
Only on the
correct,
AP.
yeah.
Okay. All right, so I'm gonna make sure I'm tabletop so I don't have to worry about detent. I'm gonna make sure that I'm at 43 inches. And then once I've got my SID, I'm not gonna touch my tube. So I'm centering at the third MTP joint. I've got my left marker on there. Just gonna make sure that everything's nice and straight. And then I'm collimating to include half of the metatarsals and all of the toes. So about an inch of collimation outside the skin border on all sides. This is a perpendicular beam. She's got her shield. All right, hold still, don't move. Expose. For the oblique toes, if the toe of concern is on the lateral border, is that?
Yeah, I think I do like 4th and 5th this way,
Okay.
and 1, 2, and 3 this way.
That's what I thought. Okay.
Yeah.
So if the toe of concern is either the 4th or 5th toe on the lateral side, then you would do an external oblique. So you oblique the foot at 45 degrees externally. That puts the area of interest closer to the film. If you're doing first, second, or third toe of interest, then you're going to do an internal oblique. Make sure that the foot is 45 degrees rotated to the film. The centering is the same at the MTP joint. You're not going to center at the third anymore because of the angle of the foot. You're going to center just laterally, and you'll know that you're centered correctly because your entire anatomy, which would be all the toes, is still in the center of the light field. All right, so hold still, don't move, and expose. I'm going to show a lateral great toe. So what I'm going to have my patient do is I'm going to put this either a tongue depressor or a popsicle stick in between her first and second toe, and then I'm going to have her hold it here. What that does is it pushes toes 2 through 5 back and the first one forward. So now I've got the toe completely isolated without superimposition. I'm still going to center at the MTP joint, so the first MTP joint, and I can collimate in quite a bit. You want to make sure the toe is in a true lateral, and the way that you can do that is to visualize that the toenail is perpendicular to the IR. I have my left marker, and as much as you can, you're going to try to collimate that hand out of the field. So let's see if we can hold this finger. Let's see if we can hold it a little bit more laterally. There we go. So it's almost impossible to get it all out of there, but as much as possible, we only want to expose exactly what we have to. So that's a lateral first toe. If you were doing any other toe, you would simply just try to isolate that toe.
So like this.
Yep.
So as an example.
Mm-hmm. And you can do this with tape, tongue depressors, anything that is somewhat radiolucent and also holds the anatomy out of the way. All right, so now we're going to do foot. Okay, so I'm gonna have you go ahead and put your foot flat on this film. Is it 15? Or 10?
Yeah.
So for the AP foot, okay, for the AP foot, to match the angle of the joints in the foot, and also the angle of the top of the foot, we're going to angle our tube 10 to 15 degrees. And that is to match this. So if you have a patient that has a really high arch, you're going to go towards 15 degrees. If your patient has a flatter foot, you're going to go towards the 10 degree mark. So I'm going to go with about 10 degrees for Julie. Actually, I'm going to go 15 for Julie. She does have a pretty high arch. You can see that the medial aspect of her foot is not touching the film. And then I'm going to again center at the third MTP. Here.
And then talk about your SID adjustment.
Oh, thank you. So, because I angled 15 degrees, for every 5 degrees of angulation, your SID changes by 1 inch. And it changes in that it gets longer. So if I were at 40 inches and then I angled 15 degrees, I need to bring my tube down 3 degrees to, it's going to read out as 40 on here now. So basically, we became the hypotenuse of the triangle, which is the longest side. And so to counteract the fact that it's a longer distance from here to the IR now that it's angled, we're going to change our SID so that we still get 40 inches. So I make sure, lift up for just a second. Okay, place back down. I make sure that the part is centered to the IR, the tube is centered to the IR, left marker on the lateral side, and I make sure that I've got 1 inch of border all around to make sure that I've got adequate collimation. My shielding is here. All right, hold still, don't move, expose. Now I'm gonna do the internal rotation. So again, I'm gonna have her internally rotate her leg until her foot is at a 45-degree angle to the film. For this one, you remove your angulation. So this is back to a perpendicular beam, and remember, you have to change your SID. Back to 40 inches. Lift up for just a second. There you go, and back down, and right there. So the best way to kind of visualize that the foot is at a 45-degree angle is from this angle, and I can just see that her foot is in line. Her toes are also in line. They're not being pulled up or back. So that looks like a good oblique. All right, hold still, don't move, expose. Now we're going to do a lateral. So I'm going to have you roll all the way onto your left side. Okay. Again, we're going to center at the level of the third MTP on the medial side of the foot. So we do a medial lateral lateral. What you want to make sure of is that the bottom of the foot, or the plantar side of the foot, is perpendicular to the IR. You also want to flex the toes up a little bit to make sure that the ankle is in a 90-degree angle as much as possible. When you have your 1-inch skin border on all sides, it will include a little bit of the ankle as well. A good way to check if the foot is perpendicular. So I'm going to have you go ahead and relax your foot for a second, just totally relax. What usually happens is our foot kind of goes like this, and you can see that the plantar side of the foot is kind of at an angle. The best way to make sure that it's perpendicular is you just take another cassette and you have your patient put the bottom of their foot flat against it. What that does is it naturally dorsiflexes, so you get your 90-degree angle, and it makes sure that your metatarsals are aligned and you're in a true lateral. And she has her shield. All right, hold still, don't move, expose. So now I'm going to do a lateral calcaneus because my patient is already in that position. So I'm gonna make sure that now just the calcaneus is in the center of the IR. I'm still at 40 inches. I'm going to center at the calcaneus.
1 inch below medial.
Thank you. I was like, what's the actual?
Yeah.
So I'm going to feel for her medial malleolus, and I'm going to go 1 inch below that. For me, 2 fingers is 1 inch. So 1 inch below that, and that's where my centering point is going to be. I'm going to make sure that my field matches the body part. And then I'm going to collimate to 1 inch skin border on each side. And that's going to make sure that it includes the entire calcaneus up to the tarsal bones. And if you have the medial malleolus, then you've definitely got the top of the calcaneus. I make sure that I've got my left marker in there, wherever it fits in the field. And she's in a true lateral. So again, you want to make sure that their foot's in a true lateral, sometimes with the cassette. All right, she has her shield. All right, hold still, don't move, expose. Okay. So now I'm going to move on to the axial calcaneus.
I think it's 40. You could grab my Merrill's and double check, but
It's 40 also.
it's 40.
So I'm gonna have you put your leg flat, good. I'm gonna put this underneath you. So on this one, you're gonna have a pretty steep angle. So when you have an angle, you don't wanna put your actual body part in the center of the film, because what's gonna happen is when you have an angle, it's going to project it in a different place. So I'm gonna put her calcaneus at the end of the film as opposed to the center. And once we add the angle and the light field, I'll show you how the calcaneus will still be projected in the center of the light field. So I'm going to angle my tube to 40 inches. That means that I'm going to have to change my SID by 8 inches. I'm going to, because my tube doesn't go that far, what I'm going to have to do is move my patient up. So as high as I can go. 43 minus 8 is down to 35 SID. And so now I'm going to have you dorsiflex your foot as much as possible. Good. And I'm looking to enter at mid-calcaneus. So it's about the bottom third of the foot. If you were to cut the foot into 3 chunks, you're basically going to center between the second and third. What that's going to do is going to project the calcaneus upwards. And so now I'm going to make sure that the center of my tube is aligned with the center of my IR. So I'm lift up a little, go down. You collimate to 1 inch of the skin border at the distal portion of the foot, and it will make sure that it gets the entire calcaneus. You make sure that the foot is straight up and down. You don't want it to be angled this way or this way because you'll get superimposition of the bones. So straight up and down and dorsiflex as much as they can. If they're not able to dorsiflex and hold it like this, then you can put a piece of tape around it and have the patient actually hold it back.
Or if they sit up, they can pull.
Yeah.
Whatever works.
You can take the strap of the lead shield and it just helps the patient dorsiflex a little bit. All right, and so now I'm just going to adjust to make sure that we're still in the same position. I'm gonna have you scoot back just a little bit. There we go, you're good. And left marker on the lateral side.